Hello and welcome to MSL Learn's Module 2, Improving Safety and Efficiency by Design. My name is Akhila Soni and I'm an urban designer with WRI India. This module starts where the last module ended, the principle of designing for universal access as a key step in Mumbai's agenda for streets. This module will take you further through this principle and we'll demonstrate how we can safely transform our streets to be usable by all users. In this module, what will you learn? We learn how to critically analyze the performance of streets in Mumbai today. We'll understand how streets function, identify a new design approach for streets, and apply these strategies in our projects. You saw this image in our last video, where we spoke about how in the last 20 years, we have built several large-scale infrastructure projects like Sea-Link, freeways, and highways to move more vehicles and move them faster. While we did that, we also widened our inner streets to the maximum extent possible. So today, many arterial roads that you see have been completely widened or are in the process of being widened. We did this to improve the carriageway capacity, right, and to improve the vehicle efficiencies. Let's have a look at how these streets performed on ground though. This is HP Junction in Bandra. From a couple of years ago, this is quite a major junction on SV Road and sees about 50,000 vehicles using it every day. While we widened our streets, we also widened our junctions massively. So this junction could easily hold about 3 basketball courts very easily. Now in the next minute, we'll see how this junction performs. On the same carriageway as the cars, you will see that there is another user group on the street, which are the pedestrians. These pedestrians are, by the way, exactly equal to the number of vehicles during peak hours. So you can imagine the volumes that we're talking about here. They are on their way to Bandra station, for which they have to cross the road. You see that they're waiting on the road itself. Now the reason for this is because they simply don't have any other place to wait. Ideally, they would have waited on the traffic island, but in this case, it's completely built up and inaccessible to them. Once the signal stops, pedestrians cross and wait at the next safe space for them, which is next to the median. Even as they're waiting there, you will see more and more people crossing the road from Turner Road and joining them, and the group becomes much larger. They're waiting for a safe chance to cross the road to reach Bandra station. Once the signal changes, the turning vehicles take a right turn and meet the pedestrians on the road itself. This creates conflict, leading to a delay, which leads to a final decrease in efficiency of the junction at this particular point of time. So not only are the vehicles moving a lot slower, pedestrians are also risking their lives for something as simple as crossing the road. And this is a situation that happens throughout the day. While we widened our roads, we also tried to beautify them at many junctions, not just HP. Islands have been beautified by adding planters, gardens, sculptures, like you can see, which makes them a bit inaccessible for pedestrians and also obstructs vehicular visibility at certain locations. As a consequence of beautification, pedestrians have no place to cross because crossings are blocked. And what happens when you block crossings? When you block crossings, people ultimately cross where they can, which is at mid-block locations or wherever there is a gap in the median. Such locations, since they're unplanned, are quite disruptive to vehicle movement, but they are also very, very dangerous to people who are crossing, as there is no speed protection to the vehicles that are approaching the crossing. Many times, the pedestrian crossing are not visible to cars, and the median itself is quite narrow for them to stand. What about junctions where pedestrian infrastructure has been provided? Like this junction in South Mumbai, which has high volumes of pedestrians walking from Churchgate to VT station on this route that you see. But the reality is that while this is the planned refuge area and crossing area, this is actually where people end up walking. Here they end up walking on the carriageway right next to the vehicles. Even on recently improved roads, the focus has been on improving or widening the carriageway. And let's look at what we've done to the edges in that case, right? We have not designed them to the best possible extent, so they either can't fully be used because they're very narrow, or there are many elements that obstruct the usage, or in some cases, the footpath itself is just missing. When the edges become unusable, what does that do to a street's performance? Let's dissect this by taking the case of this road in Parel East, which leads to Curry Road Station. Again, note here that the road has been widened to the extent possible. We have a 9-meter wide carriageway and a 1.5-meter wide footpath. Broadly, you can say given as per the guidelines. But about half of the footpath is actually taken up by either spillover from the shops or by the street light and the bus stop. As a result, the balance 0.75 meters is barely enough for one person to stand on, let alone a group of people. So then obviously people choose to walk on the carriageway where they have an assured, continuous and convenient part for them to walk on. And this further reduces the carriageway. What we have essentially is that we're operating at 30% less carriageway space, which is as good as where we were before we widened our roads. But in this case, people's lives are also being risked. This photo was taken just before the evening peak hour, where the number of both pedestrians and vehicles is only going to increase from what we see here. If we zoom out a bit and see, this has a huge impact on the overall street. In fact, we did a study of Hill Road about a few years ago and found out that about for 70% of the corridor, people prefer to walk on the carriageway, which is basically what you see marked in red. And you can imagine the impact that this has when on 70% of your street, people are walking or on the carriageway and not on the footpath. Why does this happen, you ask? Because of this, right? At many locations, the footpath itself is not usable. Either there are trees or there is a gate, or there are bus stops, utility boxes, planters, parking, all of them placed in such a way that the footpath usability gets affected. Many times in Mumbai, I have come across people saying that no matter, how well you design footpaths or how well you design crossings, people simply don't know how to use them, or rather, they don't want to use them. But I think, if you really understand the situation, it really brings the question to us as to why are people not using them? Do we need to maybe design them better so that people are invited to use them? That's really something, for us to think about. This is the paradigm shift we spoke about in our last video. You will remember that we spoke about how we need to shift our focus from moving cars to moving people. But what if I told you that designing for this new paradigm will actually help improve vehicle efficiency? So there's an obvious need to modify our design approach. But before we do that, let's take a closer look to understand how our streets function. Our streets have many users, right? So there are cars, trucks, people on two-wheelers, in auto rickshaws, taxis, and of course we have cyclists and pedestrians. In Mumbai alone, pedestrians actually constitute about 51% of the entire population, and they're the ones actually using the street. And our streets also have many uses. Traditionally, we understand that there are vehicles moving on the carriageway and there are pedestrians moving on the footpath. But we also have all these other activities, which happen on the street. There are bus stops, taxi stands, on-street parking area, utility boxes, signal, street lights, you name it. Take any street in Mumbai, take the street outside your house or your work, and you see most of these elements present. And of all these street users and users that we spoke about, 50% of them actually happen along the edges. So how can you not design for them really? That's really the question over here. And clearly, from all of this, we can gather that just widening our roads is not enough. We need to design for all street users. And in this next section, we will look at a few specific strategies on how we can implement this approach. First, design complete streets. Complete streets are streets designed and operated to enable safe use and support mobility for all users. They include people of all ages and abilities, regardless of whether you're traveling as a driver, a pedestrian, cyclist, or someone on the bus. And this means that we need to re-engineer our streets to provide dedicated infra for all street users in their contexts. So this is an example from a major arterial road in Mexico City, which was redesigned as per the complete street concept. It went from a road without any dedicated infrastructure to a corridor designed for all street users. So, apart from cars, car lanes, you will see cycle lane, pedestrian crossings, footpaths, BRT lane and BRT station. And implementing these changes has also other benefits in terms of road safety. It's expected to lead to almost a 40% drop in fatalities and injuries. Closer home, this concept has been implemented on LBS Road in Mumbai. You remember this picture which we had seen earlier of LBS Road. And LBS today has now been redesigned for every street user. One of the first things we did is that we fixed the travel lanes at 10.5 meters as the carriageway and having 3 travel lanes, and then we designed the edges. So today, there are contiguous footpaths for pedestrians, space for on-street parking, dedicated auto taxi stands, bus stops, and even cycle infrastructure. So in this case, again, every user has an assigned mobility corridor. And this is how the edge of LBS looks today. Wide, easily usable, and a space that invites people to walk on it. Even where there are bus stops, they are located in such a way that they don't obstruct pedestrian movement, and users traveling on different modes don't come into conflict with each other. Our 4th module on redesigning streets, which is coming up in 2 weeks, will actually take this up in more detail. Next, design junctions for all users. This is HP Junction today. It's been redesigned for maximum vehicle efficiency, but also pedestrian movement and safety. Again, this was done by maintaining the same number of travel lanes and just by reclaiming unused carriageway. Earlier, this junction was fairly difficult to cross, but after implementing, about 80% of pedestrians who used the junction earlier actually find it much easier to cross today. And having said that, vehicle clearance times are also much faster. We invite you to watch our next module coming up next week on redesigning intersections, which will go a bit more into detail into the process of designing. While designing streets for all street users, it is very, very important that we design certain critical street elements very well. As architects and urban designers, one very basic principle that we're all taught in school is, design influences behavior. And that is precisely what I would like to share with you in the next section, which are a few things you can consider while designing some everyday street elements. First, we look at footpaths. Footpaths should be designed into 3 zones to accommodate all the street uses, right? So as you can see on the screen, you have a frontage zone, which takes care of the spillover from the street side shops and activities. There is a multi-utility zone, which is towards the curb side of the footpath, where utility boxes, street lights, trees, even on-street parking can be housed. And then most importantly, you have the central zone of the pedestrian zone, which should be a clear, unobstructed, continuous pathway for people to walk on. This zone is typically designed as per pedestrian volumes, but today, since we are in a post-COVID world, another aspect comes into play, which is considering physical distancing requirements. This sort of footpath zoning has been implemented in cities like Pune with great success. Here you can see how there is a clear pedestrian zone supported by a frontage zone for shops and a multi-utility zone for parking bays, planters, etc. This has had a great effect on the overall street experience and is very inviting for people to walk on. We can also use the footpath to organize on-street parking using the multi-utility zone, like what we did in Bellasis Road. Earlier, the on-street parking, which was happening on the side strip or the residual area, is now neatly organized in parking bays on the multi-utility zone and is protected on either side with a curb extension. And again, the edge here was designed not intruding into the travel lanes on the road. I spoke about curb extensions while explaining providing parking bays for footpaths. And what are curb extensions, right? So they're basically footpath extensions that are done up to the parking lane. What this does is that it makes the pedestrians more visible before crossing and reduces the pedestrian crossing distance, as you can see here. Curbs can also be designed as per the required turning radius, so that's not a problem. And the other advantage is with this is that it helps prevent parking at junction corners, which is something we see quite often across the city. How do we ensure continuity outside property entrances? Again, these are typical cases in Mumbai where property gates, open out onto the footpath, blocking access, or there are property ramps, which take up the footpath. Details like this can make it a little difficult for people to use the footpath. This also has a very simple solution. Basically, prioritize unhindered continuous pedestrian movement. Ideally, like in option 1, continue the footpath in front of the gate and provide a small ramp for vehicles to mount. You can put bollards on either side, which will prevent vehicles from turning onto the footpath. And in cases where it is not possible to raise the entire footpath, you can do what we provided in option 2, whereas you keep the area in front of the gate at carriageway level and ramp up the footpaths on both sides. In this case, at least pedestrians have a continuous path to move on. Next, we come to traffic islands, which are again a very important element. They can make or break the performance of a junction. So there are two simple priorities when you look at traffic islands. 1, the traffic island should hold pedestrians safely while they're crossing, and they should be accessible from the crossing. And 2, guide or streamline the vehicle movement without obstructing visibility. A good thumb rule to keep in mind while designing an island is that keep 70 to 80% of the island open for pedestrians to access, and you can use the balance area, to have planters or any such things. But even those should not be more than, say, 60 centimeters in height. Basically, what we're trying to ensure here is that people have enough space to wait on the island and they're not forced to spill over onto the carriageway. Just to quickly demonstrate the impact of a well-designed island, here's a before-after picture, before-after video of an island design in HP Junction. Here we can see how the island design today on the right has sufficient landing area for pedestrians to stand and wait before they cross the road, as well as it continues to guide the turning vehicles seamlessly. Next, we look at pedestrian crossings. So there are two types of pedestrian crossings we look at, junctions and those at mid-block. With pedestrian crossings, provide them in such a way that people will use them. That is literally the main design principle here. Keep them as direct and short as possible, between 3 to 4 meters wide, which is standard as per IRC. And it should end at a footpath or island which has sufficient landing area. Keep them located as close to the junction as possible, following the line of pedestrian movement. These are images from recently implemented projects at Wadala and Bindu Madhav Thackeray Chowk at Worli, which are now much easier to walk and cross thanks to these crossings. Where pedestrian crossings meet the footpath, provide gentle ramps so that they can be used easily by people in wheelchairs, the elderly and young children. We know it's not always easy to construct a ramp, especially at junction corners where there may be chambers and pipes and so on. But there are other solutions, that we can provide as well. Take this example where the entire footpath is then taken down to carriageway level at the corner, protected by bollards so vehicles don't enter. And then after the corner, the entire footpath again ramps up. Very similar to the property ramp detail which I showed you in the earlier slides. Again, I would like to emphasize that don't not provide a ramp because there are these site issues. There are many ways to construct a ramp. There are many solutions, for everything. Crossings can be designed as per the requirement, right? So depending on the width can vary depending on the, let's say, the pedestrian volumes, for example. In high volume zones, you can provide a dedicated signal face to allow pedestrians to cross in all directions, like at this junction in Brazil. In a way, this already happens at certain high pedestrian influx junctions in Mumbai, like take the junction outside Mahalakshmi station, for example. During peak hour, there are just so many pedestrians waiting to cross that you will find that the local traffic police often just stops all the vehicles and allows people to scramble across the junction, clearing it quickly. So this is not something new to us. Race crossings and junctions are another very sort of easy measure to implement, but it's quite uncommon so far. This is very good in places where safeties are concerned or where there are high volumes. Here, the crossing or junction is kept at the same level as a footpath. This prioritizes pedestrian movement. This makes pedestrians more visible to cars. The speed reduction here, because of the ramp, the vehicles going on the ramp, is minor. It's about only 10%, which is not much if you consider that vehicles anyway slow down when they approach a junction. But it is significant enough to ensure that pedestrians are kept safe and you lower the risk of any crashes happening. The last point in crossings is to design mid-block crossings. Provide them frequently as per site demand, but also very carefully. Every mid-block crossing should have some sort of speed management measure that makes it safer for the pedestrian. Like take this example from Brazil, which is a mid-block crossing, where it has been provided as a raised crossing that is marked very clearly, that is also signalized and has a 25 kilometers per hour speed limit. What we can do here in Mumbai is provide speed humps before crossings. They are a simple, effective way to lower speeds. Again, here the biggest thing to remember that speed humps don't necessarily need to halt the traffic, but just simply lower the speeds. So depending on the speed that you want the vehicle to travel, let's say you want to bring vehicles down from 70 kilometers to 30 kilometers per hour, ensure that your speed hump length is about 4.9 meters. If it's 40 kilometers per hour, then 7.4, 50 kilometers per hour, 10.8, and so on. But always ensure that you do provide a crossing. Then looking at medians and median refuge islands. Medians also have two principles here, right? Like one, it should be wide enough. The median should be wide enough at the junctions to hold the pedestrians. About 1.5 to 2 meters is a good width. And they should not obstruct driver visibility by having signages, tall planters, any art sculptures right within the junction area. Another very important, a very critical point of designing medians is that provide a protective median head after the crossing. This allows the pedestrians inside the refuge area to be safe and reduces the risk of collision. So especially when there are vehicles that are turning onto these roads. On roads without a median refuge island can be provided at junctions in case there is space. This will help reduce the crossing distance for pedestrians, and this also reduces the risk of right turn and head-on collisions. These are strategies you can immediately apply to all projects that are sitting at your desk right now. So whether it is a project that you are personally designing, or if it is something that you're overseeing of a consultant, you can quickly implement this starting from today. It could be a junction project that you have that is sitting with you, in which case design for pedestrians as well as vehicles. If it is a corridor upgradation, design it as per the complete streets concept, right? Design for all street users, design the street edge as well. If it is a footpath improvement, design it in 3 zones. We spoke about the pedestrian zone, multi-utility zone, and the frontage zone. And ensure that it is continuous, especially in front of gates. If it is a median that you're designing, ensure that it's wide enough in the refuge area, around 1.5 to 2 meters, and it has a protective median head to protect people at the crossing. If it is a traffic island, like I said, keep about 70 to 80% of the island open for pedestrian movement, and think about driver visibility. Ensure you're not blocking it in any way. And finally, when it comes to crossings, which are there in almost all our projects that we work on, provide them frequently, but provide them very carefully with speed management measures. Give ramps on the footpath on either end of the crossing so that people can easily walk through. Keep these pointers in mind while you're designing. And through the introduction of these small design changes in these everyday elements, you'll be creating a much safer, a more accessible, and a more efficient future for Mumbai streets. That brings us to the end of today's module. Thank you so much for watching. And in case you would like to answer the quiz and receive a certificate, you may please do so by clicking on the links in your messages. Please feel free to reach out to us in case of any doubts or any queries. Coming up next week, we have Module 3, Redesigning Safer Intersections. So stay tuned for that. Thank you.